Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
Well, here we are again, Jan, and today we have a special guest, Geoff McDonald. Hi, Geoff.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Geoff. And really looking forward to this podcast because Geoff is someone that we have been following, and he's got a lot of cool information to share with our people leader community. Now, Geoff, you help businesses create and complete their most important projects. We know that you are a prolific writer. You've, in fact, written 8 books. and one of them is on disruptive leadership, and we're going to explore a little bit about leadership this afternoon. And you are a speaker, and you are also the creator of Project Done. And Jan, in fact,
don't you love that as a title, Project Done, especially for people of certain personality types? That's their favourite done. Yeah, word is done.
Done,
yeah,
tick.
that's one of mine.
They're probably not my audience, though. I need the people that don't get things done.
No, I still need you. Yeah. I've read your book, Geoff, and it's, everyone needs it in their toolkit.
That's right, and I've been privy to having a look at some of the strategies that Geoff has shared, and they're fantastic, very practical, things that you can pick up and use straight away. So,
which is what we're all about as well.
That's what we're all about. So why don't we jump straight in? And I've got a couple of questions for you, Geoff. So the first one is you've written several books and several book review summaries, and these are called book wrappers, and they're reviews of leadership books, and they're the ones that we're particularly interested in. And so I thought it would be really useful if you could share maybe 3 ideas from leadership books that you think might be useful for our people leadership community.
Perfect, yep. One of my favourites is the classic book from Warren Bennis on leadership, on becoming a leader. And very simply he says you step up and become a leader when you stand up and say, I want this to happen. And I think that cuts all the crap around authority and position and all the rest of it, and who's a leader and who's not. It's such a simple, powerful definition. The other one I really love is Barbara Kellerman's book, The End of Leadership. And partly she's pointing to the ineffectiveness of a lot of leadership training in terms of the results on the ground, but in particular I think she's pointing to how social media and media generally is changing the way we get to see our leaders, and therefore it's changing our expectations of leaders, and it partly explains why our ratings of leaders are at all-time lows. The third one is a book I'm not so clear on, but I think it's a useful one. It's Kouzes and Posner's The Leadership Challenge, and they've actually been studying and researching what makes a great leader over many years, and they've been doing the research. I think their book's been bought 6 million times or something ridiculous like that, and I think it's a very basic set of, but a core set of ideas that people need. So setting visions, listening, getting people together, that sort of stuff. So that's a really good resource to just ground yourself in what the prevailing thinking around leadership is.
And for someone just starting out as a people leader, that's what we actually get asked a lot, what book would you recommend? So maybe that's something for new leaders stepping into that frontline leadership role for the first time would be a good source.
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it interesting having a look at longitudinal studies on leadership? There is no silver bullet. You know what I mean? It's actually doing some of these basic things consistently and consistently well.
Yeah, and if you had to summarise it, it's really build good relationships. We get a bit fancy about all this stuff, but really it comes down to we're working with other people, be good to other people, and you'll get along and you'll get something. You'll work together, you'll get things.
We were talking about that this morning in terms of it's all about conversations. It is all about...
Which builds relationships.
So, yes, we are definitely on the same wavelength, Geoff. Okay, so the next question is, what are some of the key themes that you're seeing crop up in this leadership space of books that you're reading and reviewing?
Well, in my book, Disruptive Leadership, I pieced together some of the wraps that I'd done and tried to put a pattern around what was going on. And I put Bennis's as the first one to say, hey, it starts with me standing up to say I'm a leader. Then a lot of the work around leadership was all about the traits of the leader. And even that one of Kouzes and Posner's is really about the traits of the leader. Then we start to go, I think it's Jones and whoever the other guy is, why should I be led by you? It's really looking at that other side to say, hang on, it's not actually about the individual, it's about this engagement or this interaction with people. And then I think it flows into some particular issues that are new to leadership in the last, say, 10 or 20 years that we haven't really considered before. Gender is the classic one. So we were so dominated by men that was the way you had to be a male to be a leader, and then it certainly set up that you led in a particular way, which very much came from dominance, military, command, control, all that sort of stuff. So women in leadership changes the game completely, and hopefully for the better, because it does give us a diversity and a lot more range of how we can do this. Then you go into other things like I think the team environment and how you lead organisations is certainly from a cultural point of view, the team point of view is so crucial, because again, it was a lot of the early research was I stand up as a leader and I tell you we're going over here, but it wasn't in the trenches with people. How do we actually engage a group of people? And unless you get that engagement on the ground, you've got nothing.
And working with millennials, they want to be part of the solution. They don't want to be led by a leader. They see themselves as being self-led, and we are all leading together. So yes, we totally agree.
Well, that was really my third point. So beautiful segue there, because I think that's what Barbara Kellerman's talking about, that the way we've traditionally done leadership actually doesn't make sense anymore. So, and I use the example, if I go onto a website and I don't like what you're saying, I'm going somewhere else. And so that notion of applying that in the workplace to the millennials who live on their phones and their tablets and that, they're not going to play with that. And I think it's that they get dismissed because they seem to be upstarting and wanting to be part of the solution, but wouldn't you want that? Like, isn't that the best thing you could have from your people, to have them want to be involved in the solution?
That's right. And particularly when you consider how many managers and people leaders are saying, I'm overwhelmed, I've got so much on, spread it around, because there are people, I think they make an assumption that, they're busy anyway, I couldn't delegate anything, but that is just
or that they can't solve the problem or be solution focused, but the person closest to the problem is usually the one with the best solution.
And if there was one trend that summarised the whole thing, it's that we all have to be leaders now. And I don't mean that as the throwaway cliche that it's been. We seriously need to engage every person and bolster them as a leader.
That's right, that self-leadership notion, because what we're finding is that a lot of leaders want their organisations or people in their organisations to be accountable, and that's what a leader is truly accountable. And so we're talking the same, in the same language.
And I think that was interesting in terms of looking at traits and, what leadership traits could be, because people often ask us, do extroverts make better leaders? No, it's not necessary. It's not about the personality at all.
No.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Geoff. So actually, a couple of questions that we are creating a bit of a red thread that run through all of our podcasts, and I've got two here for you. And the first one is, what's one characteristic, in your opinion, that you think every people leader should possess or would have a better chance of being successful if they did have this?
I think you've got to either listen or be good with people. They're kind of the same thing. Particularly when we talk about everybody has to be a leader, that fundamentally means we can't always be all talking all the time. So therefore that level of understanding, empathy, compassion even is a better word than empathy, those sorts of things where we engage with other people, that's actually what the bottom line is. Because my definition of leadership is, it's like when you're out to create a change. So every leader is out to create change. And that ultimately means you've got to create change through other people's actions as well. So if you don't engage them, if you can't work with other people, you're cactus. You're nowhere.
It's like you were part of our conversation this morning, Geoff, because we were talking about, two crucial skills. And for one of us, our top one was listening.
Oh, really?
And then we've got a strategy that we're going to share with our people leaders on a webinar coming up about how to listen really effectively. and because it's a core skill.
Well, there's too many people talking and not enough people listening anymore. Oh, did you say that too, did you?
No. Oh, dear. Yes, there's this quote that somebody wrote, it was hard to have a conversation. We couldn't have a conversation because there were too many people talking.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get it right, but
the extreme version of that is the person that is actually, they're quiet, right? And you think they're listening, but they're actually just queuing up their tape recording, ready to press play for the moment.
Which is what part of the skill that we're going to share in the webinar, how you actually override that tendency, because we all do. So the things that we talk about with extroversion, the extrovert says, if you think you're talking too much, you are.
Whereas if the introvert thinks he's talking too much, he probably isn't.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so the next question. So what is one mistake that you see people leaders making most often?
I think following from what we just said, they talk too much.
Yeah, right.
They get full of themselves and think they're the answer, and so it's a tricky one for a leader. Like sometimes you've got to stand up. If you're accountable for something and the buck stops with you, you've got to actually call the line and say, "Hey, I'm going with this." And sometimes you're going to get it right, sometimes you'll get it wrong. But unless you're willing to own the result, but it also means you don't just do that in isolation, because then no one's following you. So go around, talk to your team, listen to them, talk to them, engage and find out what the thing is. But at the end of the day, make a decision and run with it.
Yeah, but engage them in they're coming up with the solution. So many, we see that so often.
Because the other thing we're talking about is the engagement surveys that we're finding people are getting the results.
This is the engagement survey period for organisations, actually. So all of their culture survey results are coming back. And some organisations and teams are quite disappointed, actually, in the results. And so, there are some strategies that we're going to share with people about how to get
which
a
is
better
one of
result
them,
next time.
have those regular conversations.
That's right.
Again, it's what we said at the start. It's treat people as people, and
because I think what they've found is each year they're getting busier and busier, trying to do more with less, and so it's that that age-old balancing act between task and people, or task and relationships. And where do they go? They go to the task, because it's very obvious what I have to get done by
and
a
it's
certain time frame.
That's short term.
That's right. So it is about those regular conversations where you're listening, engaging. Only has to be 15 minutes a week. With every person in your team is something better than nothing.
Exactly, and it's not just the conversation that how you're going. That's just a very social to start, but there is a structure to the conversation, so it's satisfying for both parties.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't actually know how to have a conversation.
True.
And that's kind of a funny thing to say, but it's like they stay at that social level of how are you, how's the kids, look at the weather today, but they don't get down to, particularly I find around projects, it's being straight with your results. You got this done or you didn't get this done is really the straightness. And then it's like, okay, what happened here?
Yeah.
And talking about that without, I know you've talked about on LinkedIn with feedback and all that sort of stuff. It's all that sort of stuff, those slightly awkward conversations. If we can get better at those, we're more likely to have them, and have them be as still probably awkward, but have them as everyday normal conversations.
And use we. So what could we do about it next time, or how could I...
Perfect.
Okay, so another question, Geoff. So you've written several books, and in fact you're an avid reader yourself. And we know for a fact that you manage to read one book a week, which I find absolutely amazing. And so what we'd love for you to do, because we always recommend our people leaders read, and we just say at least one book a year. If you can, start reading one book a year, that would be fantastic. So could you give us some tips on some strategies that our people leader community and us could adopt, so that we could, if we wanted to read a book a week, what could we do? What are the steps that we take?
Well, firstly, some weeks you're not going to get it done, but it is about one a week over, say, a year, which is obviously a different game plan.
Yeah.
But I think that the first point is to find books that really engage you. Like, don't just pick up something like, what was it like in high school when you were told you had to read that book? It was like, But if you actually could go to the bookstore or the library and pick out one and go, hey, this book sounds sensational, I'm going to read it. It's really the first step. So there's a level of engagement with the topic for starters. Then I think there's some simple things to just go, why am I going to read this? What am I going to do with this when I'm done? And for me, because I'm writing a lot, this is ammunition and fuel for me to write. So it's very easy for me to say, it's worth me reading this book because I can use it in some way. So think through the reading of the book to the other end, how can I use this? The other thing that is classic around a lot of projects is when we start a project from scratch, we actually don't have time in our diaries to do that.
Yes.
So if I said to you this week, where are you going to fit in reading the book, it's probably likely that you haven't thought about that. And until you sit there and mentally, you don't necessarily have to schedule everything, that would be the ideal. But if you mentally said to yourself, so I would often take public transport rather than drive, and that would be, okay, there's half an hour to read a book. So I've got 3 trips a week. Okay, I roughly need, say, 4 to 6 hours to read a book, depending on the book. Okay, I can probably do a couple of hours there. Okay, maybe half an hour, I'm going to go to a coffee shop and not turn off my phone, sit down and read. So there's half an hour.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get little moments of time that you know you can actually get the thing done. It'd be like trying to run for, I know you've run for a marathon recently, that it's like if you didn't actually schedule or at least think through when are you going to train, there's a good chance you're not going to get it done.
Yeah.
So just allocating mentally in your head, even better if you can schedule the time.
Oh, well, I'm a big thing for scheduling, like putting these processes in place and make them a part of your daily, weekly rhythm.
I'm just not very good at sticking to my schedule.
Oh, so yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm a creature of habit.
So I'm a bit more of a rules-based to say, okay, when I'm on public transport, I read.
Yeah.
When I'm going for coffee, I'll read. And I might go in the middle of an afternoon. If I've got a lull spot, I need a break, I might read. The other thing is, the classic one is, always carry a book with you.
Yes, great, yes.
Because you don't know when you're going to get a chance.
Yeah.
So if someone's running late,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, oh, you've got a book, fantastic.
Very good.
So often it's like someone's running late, oh, really, really sorry, and it's like, oh, fine, I'll pull out my book, I'll read for 15 minutes.
Yes.
You know, so it's picking time and obviously treating it as a commitment. So obviously you go, oh yeah, I'd really like to read, you know, a book a week, and then not doing anything about it. It's not a very strong action around your commitment. So you do really need to take it seriously. So, and again, for your reason, not for anybody else's.
Yeah.
Don't read books just for the sake of it. That's a waste of time too.
Great. And what do you think about audio books? Because I listen to audio books when I'm driving to Melbourne.
I'm not an audio person, but whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Podcasts. So the other thing is, media's fragmented.
We love podcasts.
So it doesn't have to be books.
Yeah.
So we're listening to podcasts with really interesting guests. could be really valuable as well, right? So it doesn't actually have to be books anymore. But it is about thinking about it as your professional development. And if you're not engaging and keeping up, you're basically getting behind.
Great.
The other thing I'd say comes from Stephen King. So written a lot of movies, actually. He's written a lot of books that have become movies. And his favourite saying is, if you want to be a better writer, be a better reader. And I think that comes across to a lot of areas.
Very good. Oh, thank you, Geoff. You're just font of knowledge. So the next one is about Project Done. So you've developed a program called Project Done. Could you share with our people leaders what it is, how it would help them, and how to find out more?
Sure. So the simple version is, I was really good and still am really good at starting projects, but I was always pretty lousy at finishing them. And so partly I sat down and I had a bit of a breakdown around not getting things done. So I sat down to work out how would I get it done, because traditional ways, if you're really good at getting things done, it's very likely you can write a to-do list or a checklist, and then you can just go through the tasks, tick, 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 tick. If you're good at that and you're good at getting things done in that way, that is probably all you need. For me, that didn't work because, as I said before, I don't stick to my schedule. And I think what it comes down to for me, because I'm a creative, I want to actually keep making choices all the way. So the idea of having a plan, so ironically I trained as an architect, and the architect designs the entire building and then hands it over to the builder to build. So there's two things there. One, they design every nut and bolt before they take any action. And then B, they don't actually even take any action. So I got trained in that way of thinking. And I found when I tried to apply that to my business stuff, it just didn't work. I'd plan myself to death. You know, I'd know every single thing that I thought was going to go wrong, and I'd have this brilliant plan. It'd last about 3 days, and then it's like, oh my God, do I have to keep doing that? Because I wanted something else to be creative. So if you're someone that can stick to a process and a schedule and a to-do list, keep doing it, because it's likely that's working. If it's not working for you, that's when Project Done might be useful. And in the same way, you might be getting things done, but your people might not be for various reasons. And basically it was looking at a more holistic way of how do you maintain your motivation over time, because that's fundamentally the problem. If you look at mindfulness, mindfulness basically comes down to two parts. What's your intention and what's your attention on? And so if you're writing your to-do list and you can stick to it and your attention's on it and you can get your task done, you're there. Otherwise, you need things like habits. You need to design your environment. You probably need to design your motivation into why you're doing your project. So remember, I spoke about that with the books. Why do you want to read this book? What's the value? And if you can keep coming back to that, that's a way to keep coming back to, oh, this intention's still valid, this intention's still valid. So they're the sorts of things. So the other one is I'd add in is the people side of it. A lot of my projects have fallen over because it's just been me. Whereas if I'd had a group of people, and even if we weren't working on the same project, if they were keeping me accountable.
Absolutely,
I think that's such a huge one. It just makes it so much easier, particularly if like, oh, Jan, I'm struggling today, what do I do here? That sort of support makes all the difference, and that's why teams can produce much better results than individuals can in most cases.
We are our accountability buddies, aren't we, Jen?
Well, I think we need that as, somebody you respect, but also they need to be willing to stand up and go, I'm going to call you on that.
I know. And that's been the challenge for us too as well, is being able to stand up and go, well, actually, no, you haven't been doing that. And, forgiving each other.
Yeah, but also you've got a good spirit that it's not like you walk in with the chainsaw.
It's great.
Like,
we've got that sorted. No. Yeah, it's only taken how many? No, it's very good. Yeah. So if people leaders were interested in Project Done, what would they do? How would they, engage you? Would they go onto your website or?
Probably the website's the best way. So my main website is geoffmcdonald.com.
Right.
That's got 1,000 blog posts and a million other things on there. So that's massive. Projectdone.com.au is the smaller version with just about Project Done. And it's currently, I've run it as a 90-day program, and I'm looking at variations of even a monthly program, and then looking at the people that have done the program multiple times and now looking at mentoring.
Fantastic.
And if people want an introduction, I can come in and do a presentation around it as another way.
Great.
And then there's resources like the book's a resource, Weekly Done's a weekly tip.
And they're great tips. They're really good practical strategies, Geoff.
Yeah, I just think there's so much simple 1%ers we can do that over time. Again, you said it before, there's no magic bullet for leadership. There's no magic bullet for getting things done. It's a bunch of little things that you do consistently over time.
Absolutely. And how you said about the 1% shift, and that's what we talk to our clients about. It's not doing a big 180, it's just shifting slightly, because other's if it's too much, it's too stressful for what we actually have to do. So there's some great
corrections.
That's
right.
Yeah,
wonderful.
So there were some great insights.
Yes.
So Michelle, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, okay.
Because when we finish up, because we do that.
Yeah.
But usually when we finish up with a client or an interview, it's like, what's the biggest takeaway or what's the biggest learning? So for you, Michelle, what's the biggest learning or takeaway from what you've just heard?
Actually, I loved, isn't it interesting what you pick up on? I love the idea, because I definitely want to achieve that goal of reading a book a week. And so why, Jen, is that your one? She's laughing. See, that's what happens being identical twins.
So what we
and that was one about carrying it with you all the time and having a rule about it. Like, I'm going to make sure that I read 20 pages by Thursday or something like that. So that was really powerful for me, and I may have heard you say that before, but it just like click, yes, that's what I can do.
And finding your best way to do it is the key.
Yes. Yeah. And I like your tip about actually planning it. So planning what books you like, because I'll go into a bookshop and I might see 5 books that I really like. So buy those 5 books, because that is demonstrating commitment that you really do want to read. That physical action. Yeah.
Well, the other spin on that, so I've actually stopped doing that. But that might work for you.
Yeah.
But what I found is it didn't work for me. Right. So I'd go and get the 5 books and I'd go home so excited, I got all these new toys, right? But then I'd read one and it's like the 4 would sit there, and then I'd want to go and buy another book. So what I had to tweak was one at a time.
Okay,
so
right.
It might work. Some people like to read multiple books at the same time. I've come back to one at a time.
Right.
So find a way that works
for you.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you again, Geoff, and we'd love to have you on again and maybe explore some of the Project Done strategies and pull them apart and see how our people leaders can apply them. I think that would be a really neat podcast.
Sure.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. My pleasure.
Yes,
Great to talk to you guys.
Okay.
hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. And while you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts on Air Podcast Network.